David Allan Coe was the world's ultimate outlaw. But there's one group of people who couldn't care less about his rebel status: his own children. For over a decade, the Mysterious Rhinestone Cowboy lived a life of total silence from his kids. And the reason why isn't just about his controversial music. It's about a 2013 accident that changed everything. When David Allan Coe passed away in April of 2026 at 86 years old, the country music world erupted in a wave of nostalgia and grief. Tributes poured in for the man who wrote the working-class battle cry, "Take this job and shove it," and gave us the haunting masterpiece, The Ride. But behind the towering myth of the long-haired redneck who survived prison, outran the taxman, and rode with outlaw motorcycle clubs, lay a devastating, tragic reality. While millions of fans wept for the loss of a legend, his own bloodline was grieving a completely different kind of tragedy. They were mourning a father who had chosen to spend the final decade of his life in total, icy isolation from them. This is the story of a family collapse so profound that his children only found out their father had died when they read it on the news. To understand how a father could end up so completely severed from his children, we have to look back at the foundation of the David Allan Coe myth. Born in Akron, Ohio in 1939, Coe did not just play the part of a hardened criminal, he lived it. He was sent to a reform school at the tender age of 9 and spent the vast majority of his youth and early adulthood cycling in and out of correctional facilities, having been convicted of crimes ranging from possession of burglary tools to auto theft. By his own account, he spent time on death row and even claimed to have killed a fellow inmate in an Ohio penitentiary. While later journalistic investigations cast serious doubt on some of his grandest, most violent claims, the truth remained that Coe was deeply institutionalized and harbored a profound distrust of authority and societal norms. When he finally walked out of prison in 1967, he had no home, no money, and no safety net. He lived in his car, parking outside the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, determined to force the country music establishment to look at him. His early music, like the raw, gritty penitentiary blues, was a direct reflection of this brutal, lonely upbringing. He was a man who had been abandoned by his own parents, which makes the subsequent abandonment of his own children all the more tragic. As Coe's star began to rise in the 1970s, he crafted a persona that was too outlaw for the outlaws. He wrote massive hits for other artists, like Tanya Tucker's "Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone," and Johnny Paycheck's career-defining anthem, "Take This Job and Shove It." He became the first country artist to record Tennessee Whiskey, a song that would later become a multi-platinum standard for George Jones and Chris Stapleton. Yet, even as his musical genius was undeniable, his personal life was a chaotic storm of bad luck and misadventure. Coe was married 6 times and fathered multiple children, including Tyler, Tanya, Shelley, Cheyenne, and Carson. But raising a family requires stability, something a self-proclaimed professional outlaw was entirely incapable of providing. The Internal Revenue Service was constantly on his tail, eventually repossessing his home and forcing him, by some colorful accounts, to live in a cave for several months to avoid his debts. He was constantly running, constantly fighting, and always keeping himself at the center of the universe. This chaotic lifestyle took a massive toll on his children. By 2007, news sources reported that he owed over $300,000 in unpaid child support. He used his children as props in his traveling roadshow, bringing them on stage when they were toddlers, yet failing to provide the basic emotional or financial security they desperately needed. Of all his children, his son Tyler Mahan Coe was perhaps the most deeply entwined in David's world. Tyler did not just grow up in the shadow of the legend, he joined him on the battlefield of the road. At just 15 years old, Tyler joined his father's band as a rhythm guitarist. For 13 years, Tyler lived on the tour bus, eventually rising to become the band leader of the DAC Band. He coordinated the shows, managed the musicians, and served as the buffer between his highly volatile father and the rest of the world. It was a grueling, intense existence, but it was a way for Tyler to stay close to a man who was notoriously difficult to love. His sister, Shelley, also contributed, working as a backup singer on the road. For a time, it seemed that the music was the one thin thread keeping this fractured family together. But working for David Allan Coe was like walking through a minefield. His contract demands were legendary and bizarre, including strict mandates that all air conditioning vents in a venue be sealed, because if he felt a draft, he would refuse to play. The tension in the camp was always near boiling point. But what if the story of their ultimate estrangement isn't just about a father being difficult? What if the complete collapse of this family was triggered by a terrifying, near-death experience that allowed a new, controlling force to seize absolute power over David's life? On a dark Florida road in the dead of night, everything changed in a fraction of a second. A catastrophic event shattered the outlaw's body and left a massive power vacuum in his inner circle. And the person who stepped in to fill that vacuum did something unforgivable. They systematically built a wall around the aging legend, ensuring that his children would never be allowed to speak to him or see him alive again. That catastrophic event took place on March 19, 2013 in Ocala, Florida. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, David Allan Coe was driving his Chevrolet Suburban home from a casino when he ran a red light. His vehicle was broadsided by a massive Peterbilt semi-truck carrying a load of radishes and corn. The impact was devastating. The semi-truck flipped on its side, wrapping around a concrete pole, while Coe's SUV was crushed and pushed into a nearby parking lot. Coe had to be cut out of the vehicle by rescue crews and was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries, including head trauma, broken ribs, and bruised kidneys. He was 73 years old, and many feared he wouldn't survive. But the outlaw was tough, and within a few months, he was back on stage. However, the man who returned to the stage was not the same. When Coe performed at Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic later that year, he made a shocking announcement to the crowd. He claimed that after the wreck, everyone in his life had abandoned him except for his new wife, Kimberly Hastings, whom he had married in 2010. He told the audience, "My road manager of 35 years quit me. My band quit me. Everybody quit me." This was a flat-out lie, and it sparked a devastating family war. The truth was far more complicated. Tyler Mahan Coe immediately went public to defend himself and the loyal crew members who had been slandered. Tyler revealed that he had absolutely not quit his job. Instead, after the accident, David's wife Kimberly had used the singer's physical vulnerability to orchestrate a total purge. She reportedly fired the entire band, including Tyler, and replaced them. Tyler explained that his father had become increasingly dependent on Kimberly, famously stating when they married that he was simply tired of making decisions for himself. This psychological surrender allowed Kimberly to take complete control of David's business, his schedule, and his personal life. She began systematically blocking his children from contacting him. Tyler and his siblings found their phone numbers blocked, their messages intercepted, and their attempts to visit their ailing father flatly rejected. The family was plunged into a silent, painful exile. The depth of this pain was beautifully and tragically captured by Coe's daughter, Shelley. In 2015, she released a poignant, heart-wrenching song titled "All They Ever Wanted Was Your Name." The track was a direct commentary on the tragic irony of their lives. While millions of fans around the world clamored for a piece of David Allan Coe, his own children wanted nothing to do with the fame, the money, or the controversial outlaw legacy. All they wanted was a father who would recognize them, love them, and give them his time. But they were shut out, forced to watch from a distance as their father's legacy was commercialized and his health declined. Meanwhile, Tyler channeled his lifelong immersion in the country music world into creating the critically acclaimed podcast, Cocaine Rhinestones. The show became an international phenomenon, praised for its obsessive research and brilliant storytelling. It was Tyler's way of reckoning with the ghosts of country music, a world his father had helped build, even as he remained entirely estranged from the living legend himself. When the end finally came on April 29, 2026, the tragedy of the Coe family reached its heartbreaking climax. David Allan Coe died in an intensive care unit at the age of 86. His widow, Kimberly, immediately went to the press confirming his death to Rolling Stone and releasing a beautiful, polished tribute about her husband and confidant. But for David's 8 children, there was no press release, no private phone call, and no final goodbye. Tanya Montana Coe took to social media in a state of absolute devastation, writing that waking up to the news of her father's death without being given the opportunity to see him one last time was a hell she wouldn't wish on her worst enemy. She pleaded with her followers, asking if anyone had information about funeral arrangements because she and her siblings had been kept completely in the dark. They were literally begging strangers on the internet for a chance to attend their own father's funeral. Mahan Coe also broke his silence, posting a deeply complex, raw reflection on his Patreon page. He did not sugarcoat his father's complicated, often offensive legacy. He admitted that David Allan Coe was always a difficult person to be close with and a difficult person to care about. He confessed that he hated the choices his father had made for how to spend the final decade of his life, specifically choosing isolation and allowing a wall to be built between himself and his children. Yet, despite the years of silence, despite the painful firing and the public lies, Tyler admitted that he never stopped caring. He wrote that he never wanted anything bad to happen to his father, and that those destructive choices were ultimately his father's to make. It was the tragic, honest assessment of a son who had spent a lifetime trying to love a man who was simply too busy being a myth to be a dad. David Allan Coe spent his entire life running away from the boundaries of polite society, cultivating an outlaw image that became his ultimate identity. But in the end, that very image became his prison. The man who sang so passionately about family, heritage, and the deep roots of country music died completely cut off from the children who carried his blood. He chose the comfort of control over the messy, difficult work of reconciliation, leaving a legacy that is forever fractured. The Rhinestone Cowboy is gone, but the silence he left behind speaks louder than any song he ever wrote. To understand how the dark underbelly of the outlaw country movement destroyed more than just the Coe family, click on the video on your screen right now, where we break down the shocking, untold tragedies of the artists who gave everything to the music, only to lose themselves in the process.